Hello, everybody. So we're gonna be taking a look at some Untamed changes that I want to see come to the Untamed in the future. I love this spec for what it is. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I feel like I'm like one of the only people who actually has fun at this elite spec. It seems to be very very negative in the Ranger community. Some of these picks might be a little controversial. I want to get that right out of the way because it leans into the Beastmaster playstyle a little bit more. However, I've always said, if you don't want a Beastmaster playstyle, if you don't want to play with your pet, just play Soul Beast. It's right there for you. You could just suck in your pet 24/7 and it does perfectly fine. So that's just my personal opinion on that, though. I wanted to lean more into the Beastmaster sort of playstyle that Untamed tries to do. Take some tips from the Mechanist because I feel like they do Ranger better than Ranger does with Untamed in terms of like the pet interaction and stuff like that. And so, yeah. Let's go ahead and get straight into this. So, people have been talking about the lack of damage on Untamed. I do agree. I think there is definitely a lack of, damage. I feel like that is just, there is really, nothing you could really do to counter that. It's just straight up, not enough damage in terms of, in comparison to what is also a DPS focused one like Soul Beast. I don't think this will ever reach the heights of Soul Beast, unless if it does something absolutely ridiculous. I don't think it will ever do that, mainly because of the fact that it relies on your pet, and, pet AI is a thing, so we all know how that goes. But I do think we can get close, and there could be some other utility brought. Now, this isn't going to talk about, like, support playstyles or anything. I'm really just going to talk about a damage sort of playstyle, because that's personally what I'd like to see come in. And yeah, so how do I think we could solve this damage problem? Well, there's a few ways we can go about it, but mostly I want to give our pet more damage. I know some people will be like, no, we need to give yourself more damage, but because of the fact that this is, like I said, a Beastmaster sort of spec, they're kind of wanting to do that, and I wanted to lean in a little bit more into that. So there's a few ways we can go about this. There's a little quality of life change that could add a little bit more damage. So having these traits here count for your pet too whenever they disable a foe. So just these two traits here would be kind of a nice thing to have. Would be kind of nice. And also I guess Fervent Force too would work. Although I feel like this trait's already really potent as is if you're using the hammer. So yeah, I don't know. You could kind of make that optional there. I don't really know if that'd be a good idea making it just because it's such a strong trait. But these two I definitely wouldn't think it wouldn't help, or wouldn't hurt if we were to make these, count for the pet. But in terms of like the serious damage increases, I want to make Vow of the Untamed count for the pet, and maybe even an increasing damage multiplier for your pet. So whenever you are unleashed, you take, you deal 15% more damage, and then whenever your pet's unleashed, you take 10% less damage. I'd like to see this straight count for the pet. I think this would be a really, really awesome thing. By the way, I also want to mention these pet damage increases that I would talk about. You can mix and match them. I'm not suggesting that all of these should come in, right? You could just do one or whatever. So yeah, it's just giving a variety of ways to go about it. So the Vow of the Untamed counts for the pet. That's one of the ways you could do it. Even increasing scale for your pet in comparison to you in terms of the damage output. But yeah, Ferocious Symbiosis, just a buff to it. I feel like this is a great trait, but maybe doing 5% damage per stack instead of 3%, or maybe 4% damage per stack instead of 3%. Something really small like that could definitely really help out with the damage of this class. However, this would really kind of restrict people from using Fervent Force, so I don't really know if that's the best way to go about it. Because you obviously want to make it, Fervent Force is already really strong, but I don't know. I actually personally don't like this trait because it feels like it relies so heavily on the hammer, and we're going to be talking about the hammer later. I don't like the hammer. So yeah, Ferocious Symbiosis is definitely a good trait already, but I feel like giving a little bit of a buff to it, maybe even just like a buff just for your pet, although I feel like it might be a little confusing, but you'd have to adjust the tooltip on it. So maybe it'd be 5% damage per stack for your pet and 3% for you. So we have this sort of thing with Soul Beast. So if I switch to Soul Beast here, so Sikkim here, right? So this is a tooltip. It shows that whenever whenever you're in Soul Beast form, you do, less damage than if you were in the non-Soul Beast form. So whenever you're not in Beast mode, your pet would be doing more damage. We could do something like that, but with these icons, you can see that there's an icon for your pet being unleashed and for you being unleashed. So we could do that sort of thing where, it showcases the pet damage, and then it showcases your damage differently. So that would be a good idea. I would like to see that personally. Another thing is we can actually take a tip from the Mechanist here. One of the traits on the Mechanist is your gear matters for your pet. or for the mech rather. So basically, I think it's your mech inherits either a certain percentage or just your entire stat pool in general. I think that would be a really cool idea for the pet. Simply just allowing it to do more damage. I don't know why it's playing fucking action music right now. This is weird. But you know, your pet would just straight up do more damage. And I would personally really like to see that. Because as someone who runs all Berserker's gear, I feel like this would be great just for your pet damage as a whole. You may not even need to adjust the stats. You could probably just do that and you'll be good. So yeah. So that is basically all the ideas I have for increasing your damage of the pet. I'm sure there's probably some other ones you can go about, but just kind of making them up off, you know, just on the fly. That's kind of what I came up with. And yeah, another one that I'd like to see is, you know, your pet archetypes matter. This is one of my favorite things about Soul Beast is this new pet archetype system, where whenever you're merged with a pet, you gain different things, and then a completely new skill, a completely new beast skill for your pet. Or no, I'm sorry, for you. I would like to see this sort of system brought into Untamed. This would obviously take very long, because what I'm suggesting is that there would be, you know, it'd probably take a bit of work. You'd have to do one new skill for each of the archetypes. There's tons of archetypes for pets. Obviously, there's not like 50 archetypes or whatever. There's only like, you know, I think maybe like 5 or 6, but it would still take a lot of work to be able to do that. So that's maybe of a long-term sort of change I'd like to see. But having a 4th skill, or even replacing one of the 3 skills you have, although I wouldn't really like that because these all combo off each other really, really well. But I'd like to see a 4th skill that matters based off of the archetype of your pet. So there could be a simple thing here, you know, kind of similar to what we see with Ferocious here, or, you know, the pet archetypes on Soul Beast. So your pet would just do a high damage attack if it's Ferocious, right? If it's supportive, it would just heal itself and maybe even some allies for a shorter amount, or maybe give regen to your allies, sort of similar to what the Fernhound does. And then Deadly would do some sort of condition attack, which if you were to also combo that with you know, your pet inheriting the stats of yourself, this would essentially make it so this could you could really go into like a Condi build and have it so the, you know, pet archetype is in there, and then you'd have the bonus skill which would do more damage because of the fact that it's inheriting your gear, because, you know, the default condition damage stat I think is actually pretty low, isn't it? Yeah. So you'd be able to give more condition damage and duration here. I think it's pretty much that way, right? Some of them have a little bit better, like the Iboga. But yeah, I think that'd be really, really cool personally, to have that. And yeah, just etc. We can go way, way more into detail on the other ones, right? So we could basically just kind of base it off of what we see on Soul Beast already. I think that'd be kind of a cool idea, and definitely a bit of a good change for sure. But yeah, that's just personally what I would to see for pet archetypes. There's obviously probably some more ways you can go about it, maybe with stats or whatever. If you're not choosing to do the inheriting stats, maybe you can go through it that way. But yeah, I feel like that'd be a good idea. Now this one is definitely a very long-term change, as it does affect all of the skills of the hammer. I personally, just for myself, I've seen also this feedback from other people, I don't really enjoy, I already have the hammer on, what the hell? I don't enjoy the hammer's sort of playstyle. It feels incredibly spammy. There's not really a place for each skill in terms of when to use it. I mean, unless if you are in, you know, unless if you do this sort of bouncing back playstyle where you're bouncing between the unleashed and non-unleashed form. If you're doing that sort of thing, I guess there's kind of a place, but if you're just doing the unleashed stuff and then you kind of switch into your pet and do the 3 skills and go back like I do sometimes, although sometimes I play the complete opposite way. But, you know, really all of these are just real, like, spammy. There's really not much of a place, besides I would say Unleashed Thump has a bit of a place because of the fact that it gives you, you know, boons, so it's a great opener. But also there's a blast finisher, right? So that could be really, that's also really, really cool to give it sort of a place. But other than that, it does just feel really, really spammy, to me at least. Maybe I'm a bit of you know, maybe things are a bit different for other people. But to me, it just feels really, really spammy. I can't really give suggestions, as it would take just so long to give suggestions on each and every skill for what it, you know, for what it does. But yeah, I just wanted to mention, I think that would be a cool change to see, although it would take a very long time to do that. So yeah, the final change I'd like to see, obviously I don't want all of these, I just want to mention it again, I don't want all of these to come in because it would just be blatantly overpowered at that point, but, you know, a certain mix and match, or maybe just picking a couple or whatever, would be kind of a nice thing to have. auto casting option for this, as well as actually the mechanist on the side. I would like to see that, but in terms of just this, I would. Let's get away from these guys because these guys are like chatting a whole bunch. So I'm not sure if they'd be able to pull off these skills being auto casted, but I would like to see at least the F1 and F3 for the core pet skills here go back to being auto casted, give some sort of option, right? So we see with this skill here. I'm sorry, these skills. You can do control mouse 2 to enable auto attack on here. And obviously it actually does replace your 1 being an auto attack, but still. I would like to see this sort of option come into the pet skills for Untamed. Whatever ones you could do. Honestly, it would be fine if you were to make it F1 and F3. You know, there's certain pets where it just feels overly spammy because you're just trying to hit these skills as much as possible. Like the Drakes, for instance. I mean, these are just straight up damage increases over the auto attack. There are some pets where, you know, the auto casting doesn't really matter very much, or, you know, because you would have like the Moas, for instance, because you do want to save Harmonic Cry to be off of that, but then you have Frenzied Attack, and I guess, you know, the beast ability here, they'd cast off cooldown. But yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing to talk about. I would personally like to see auto casting option come to at least some of the skills. You don't have to do all of them. It just would make things feel a little less spammy and a little more low input. I would like to see that personally, as you know, I kind of prefer them just auto casting, you know, like before. But yeah, I think that's pretty much going to cover it. There's really nothing else I want to talk about. Like I said, I'm very satisfied with Untamed. I do really enjoy it, but I would like to see a little more changes come in to make it feel a little better and have it be a bit more competitive in high-end PvE environments. So yeah, that's going to cover it, and peace.